All right, now let's talk about everybody's favorite exception, the Mongols. Okay, the Mongols were founded by this guy named Temujin, who was born in 1167. His father was a very powerful warrior who started forming alliances. His father's killed. Temujin has to take over. And so he gradually strengthens his position, forms alliances, and is able to, in 1206, organize all of the Mongol tribes into a single confederation. And they recognize his supremacy. And at that point, he is given the name Chinggis Khan, which means universal ruler. So, from a very, very early time period, um, Temujin was well versed in diplomacy, and if people didn't want to work with him, then he pretty much just got rid of them. And that's something that the Mongols carry on from here on out. So, what Chinggis Khan is going to do is he is going to break up tribal organization, and he forms military units of men of different tribes. So, everyone's going to have to learn to work together. You're promoted based on your merit and your loyalty to him. If you weren't on board with that, then they pretty much just had you killed. And even though they spend most of their time on the move, the Mongols do establish a capital at Karakorum. Keep in mind that as the Mongols go and conquer land, they create the largest continuous land-based empire in history. They only had a population of 1 million. Okay, that's less than 1% of China's population. Their army was anywhere from between 100 to 125,000 people, and so they relied on their cavalry, their bows, and what would happen is the Mongols had such a reputation for ruthlessness that a lot of people would surrender before the Mongols even got there. If you surrendered, you were rewarded. If you tried to fight against them to defend yourselves, they pretty much would kill you all. Like they would slaughter the whole population. But if you surrendered, they were really, really generous towards artisans, crafts workers, those with military skill, because that's something that they could use in their empire. So they valued that. Mongols were great at psychological warfare. They go conquer China by 1220. They go conquer Afghanistan and Persia. Oh, well, as they are going to go take over Persia, they send an emissary there. The emissary is murdered. Bad decision. The following year, Chinggis Khan took his army west to seek revenge, and it was not good. They destroyed one city after another, massacring hundreds of thousands of people. The Mongols destroyed the Quanat irrigation systems in Persia. Is it just really, really bad stuff? They destroy crops everywhere. They're preventing future rebellions. So they just devastated Persia to prevent them from trying to do anything in the future. So that's the Mongol Empire at its height. Okay. And after Chinggis's death, it's divided into 4 different khanates. You have the Khanate of Chagatai, the Ilkhanate of Persia, the Golden Horde, which is Russia, and then the Khanate of the Great Khan, which is going to include the Yuan dynasty in China that's founded by Genghis's grandson, Kublai Khan. Do we see the resemblance? He was a very ruthless warrior, but he is very religiously tolerant. That's one thing about the Mongols. They pretty much let people keep whatever they had. You don't really have to change anything when they come and conquer you. He becomes BFF with Marco Polo, who he's really fascinated with. They tried twice to invade Japan in 1274 and 1281, but on both occasions, they were thwarted by typhoons. So they never got to invade Japan, which is really sad. Like I said, so the Golden Horde was Russia. They established a tributary relationship with them until the 15th century. and they went in and raided into Poland, Hungary, and Germany. So they did make it like on the cusp of taking over all of Europe. I said, Khanate of Persia, they went and took over the Abbasids. They killed 200,000 people when they sacked Baghdad. They tried to go down into Egypt, but were stopped by the Mamluks. In Persia, they had problems in Persia because they're nomads who are trying to rule this very long-standing sedentary society because the Persian Empire has been around forever. So they depend on the Persians for a lot, for administrating, for taxes, and eventually the Mongols just kind of assimilated into Islamic lifestyle, and that's how the Mongol rule of Persia kind of dies out. In China, they hated the Chinese. There was strict separation from them, no intermarriage. They were tolerant of their religions, but you couldn't learn Mongolian language or marry a Mongolian or anything like that. And so they would bring in people, particularly Persians, into China to rule because, Chinese couldn't do it themselves. Really great with trade, reviving the Silk Roads. Trade was super, super important for the Mongols. But unfortunately, because they're nomads, they don't have a lot of experience running empires. So in Persia, they tried to replace gold and silver with paper currency, and they have problems with taxes. They have problems with taxes in the Yuan dynasty. You have inflation, you have the plague, peasant revolts, all the fun things that bring down an empire. So just slowly, the Mongols were too big for their own good and they collapse. Okay, this is the start of the Ottoman Empire. They're going to be around for a really long time. You have Osman, who declared his independence from the Seljuk sultans in 1299, takes his people, goes and attacks the Byzantine, and is going to set up the Ottoman Empire. He goes into India and conquers Tamerlane, who's a descendant of Genghis Khan. And then, most important date, probably in all of world history, because it's like the middle of everything, 1453, Mehmed the Conqueror. And neither one of these guys have the best hat for an Ottoman ruler. Goes and conquers Constantinople, renames it Istanbul. And so now you have nomadic people who have asserted control over a long settled society, and they're going to build themselves a huge empire, and they're going to last until the 20th century. So, nomads, very, very important. Don't ever underestimate them.